lovely crowd. It's so nice to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Helen Maria Nugent, for those of you who don't already know me. I have the pleasure of being the Dean of the Design Division here at CCA, of which this is part of our lecture series, so thank you all for joining us. Before we get started, I want to, on the screen right now, you see our land acknowledgement. California College of the Arts campuses are located in Huichin and Yelamu, also known as Oakland and San Francisco respectively, on the unceded territories of the Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. I encourage you to take a moment to honour the Indigenous people upon whose land we are right now, and which we live, teach and learn, to recognise the lives most severely impacted by colonisation, global crisis, racial violence and systematic injustice, and to centre yourself and commit to working towards a more just and equitable society. The Design Division at California College of the Arts is a vibrant community of around 700 design students, lots of new people for you to hire, and work with. And we also have an amazing faculty, mostly professional designers, around 250 faculty members. We're a sanctuary for those with radical curiosity and a unique educational environment where wonder and imagination are amplified through rigor and craft. Our purpose is to equip makers, thinkers, and doers with the wherewithal to envision alternate futures and the creative capacity to deliver generative solutions that inspire change. In partnership with our colleagues in fine arts, in architecture, and in the humanities, we make art and design that matters. As you can see on the screen, we are the host to 9 wonderful programs. Tonight's event is hosted by our illustration program. I think I'm in a slightly wrong order. I want to give a big shout out to our assistant chair of the graphic design program, Sarah Raffel, who's right there, who designed all of this stuff. One of the absolutely best parts of my job is to work with designers to do original designs for all of our marketing and our events. We've got another person here who also did a beautiful lecture series, so thank you for that too. So take a look around campus, because every single one of the posters is installed differently. So for those of you who care about details, there's a lot of really cool little details that are in the poster. I also want to thank our, there we are, our team, Maya, Hannah, and the rest of our team. Thank you. Videographer over there, thank you. And I want to thank Chronicle Books. I mean, I am such a huge fan of Chronicle Books, right? They're so amazing. So thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited. And I'm going to hand it over to the people who are actually going to tell you about what's happening tonight. So Michael and Shannon, welcome. These are the chair and assistant chair of our illustration program.
I'm Michael Wertz, I'm the chair of the illustration program. I know most of you, it's nice to see everybody in person. We were talking earlier about, I think we're all kind of learning how to be in a room together again, so it's really nice to have these events happen in person. Thank you for being here, thank you for taking the time. So the design lecture series reflects CCA Design's commitment to being a space for emerging voices and diverse practices. Each semester we host a roster of thinkers and practitioners who expand our idea of what design is and what design can do. For the Spring 2024 Design Lecture Series, our guest lecturers highlight the responsibility designers hold to the present and for what lies ahead. They discuss crafting from a human-centered approach to foster a future more inclusive of all realities and share their findings from their investigations. Come on in, y'all.
There's spots in the front.
Yeah. It's okay, we're all friends. Come on in. I invite you to stay tuned for more of these critical conversations next semester. So you can see what's happened so far. It's been a really amazing roster of events and speakers. So before we introduce tonight's speakers, I'd like to draw your attention to our next event, which is on April 22nd from 5 to 7 p.m., which is the origin story of 1% for the planet and Patagonia. This panel discussion, Design is Not Just for Pretty Things, is hosted by our Design MBA program, and Bhargav Bandar will be presenting for that event. Yeah.
Hey, hey. All right, so
This is Shannon Taylor, by the way.
I'm Shannon Taylor, by the way. Some of you know me. So welcome to tonight's talk. Thank you all so much for coming. Welcome, Chronicle Books. I know there's a lot of clapping just now, but so just a little bit about Chronicle Books before they get into their presentation. So Chronicle Books is an independent publisher based in San Francisco, very close to us, just over there. So they have been making things since the Summer of Love, so a while before most of you came into this earth. They are inspired by the enduring magic of books and sparking the passions of others. As publishers, they believe in partnering with artists, writers, and organizations that represent the diversity of the world. And they are committed to an inclusive company culture that respects and uplifts people of diverse backgrounds and points of view. So Chronicle Books' catalog includes art and design compendiums, nonfiction titles, photography collections, cookbooks, visual histories, kids' books, and beautifully designed stationaries and gift objects. So we are so lucky and fortunate to be joined tonight by Sarah Schneider, who is the creative director at Chronicle Books. Kayla Ferreira, okay. Who's one of the senior designers at Chronicle Books. Kristen Hewitt, who is the design director at Chronicle Books. And last but not least, Sandy Frank, who is the designer of children's books at Chronicle Books. Please welcome them to CCA. And during their presentation, just make sure you're thinking of any questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end. All right, I'm going to pass it over to people more well-spoken than I.
I don't know. You never know what thing's gonna come out of my mouth. Anyway, all right. Hi. It is so nice to be here. If I just click, how do I get to the presentation? So Shannon just did some of my work for me, so thank you. So you introduced to everybody who Chronicle Books is. So we can kind of skip ahead a little bit. So again, my name is Sarah Schneider, and I am so thrilled to be here with you all tonight. I actually attended this school when there was a third C in its name, so way back in the prehistoric age, and it's wonderful to be back here, and I just want to commend you all for making the decision to come to school here because the programs are just phenomenal, so I hope you feel proud about engaging in them. So tonight we're going to be talking about the joy, the irreverence, and the craft of publishing. Before I get into it, just real quick who we are. We're a very nice group of 200 plus people. And we all love books and we all love the magic that books inspire. As Shannon said, we were founded in the Summer of Love in 1967, and we kind of hold on to that because it's a little bit of our company lore. You know, we love the idea of the counterculture revolution at the time and the ability for people in that era to see things differently, and that's very much baked into the spirit of our company. And we, again, very inclusive company culture and that respects and uplifts people of diverse backgrounds and points of view. So what do we do? Again, we're inspired by the magic of books. We make visually driven books, gifts, games, and toys that surprise and delight and are instantly recognizable for their spirit and creativity. So what do we publish? We have 4 main umbrellas under which all of our publishing falls under. So we've got the entertainment list. This list includes things like pop culture, music, TV, and movies. So we have a lot of really robust partnerships with some of just like the behemoth IP licensed partners that you would want to create with, like Disney and Pixar, Lucas, and HBO, Showtime. It just sort of goes on. We've published with music icons like Dolly Parton, I can't remember who else, but we've partnered with rock photographer Jim Marshall around the Stones. And the pop culture can be anything from like horror heroes in the form of a horror oracle deck or canvas. We also publish humor, pets, sex, and memes. So yes, we did do a book on sex for lazy people. So any position that you might want to engage in, if you're feeling lazy, is in that book. We also, who telling you? I didn't know that this was the stuff that my future would be made of, but it is. Our art category umbrella covers things like art, design, photography, and crafts. So a monograph on the life of Ruth Asawa. We did an entire publishing program with Pantone that included books and gift products like postcards and journals, or a ceramics Bible to teach people the A to Z of getting into ceramics. We do a ton of publishing with our partner Lisa Congdon, creative partner Lisa Congdon, who is just uber talented. I Fought the Law was a book on photography that represented the most obscure laws of the country. I can't even
And that's one of them. You can't have ice cream in your back pocket.
You can't have ice cream in your... I
forget which
don't
one.
know which state. It's definitely not California.
Yeah.
Food and lifestyle. We partner with chefs and celebrities. Snoop would like to think of himself as both a chef and celebrity. He's definitely a celebrity.
Yeah.
Tartine, which I'm sure many of you know, is in San Francisco. We do regional stuff like this book Le Sud, which is on the regional cooking of southern France. Single subject books like cookies or chili crisp, beverages, wine, cocktails, it goes on. We do wellness and mindfulness and travel and relationships and gardening and beauty. So Modern Caravan, this hit at a really great time because we didn't know this would hit during the pandemic, but just how can you pack it all in and live life in an RV? The power of empathy or doing yoga while stoned. Then our children's list is just so, I don't want to use the word magical again, so it's another word for it. Inspired. It's just so inspired. We work with so many gifted illustrators to put together just lovely, just wonderful picture books that just have a lot of meaning as well, and they're not your typical stories. To establish lessons for kids that just go beyond. So They All Saw a Cat, for example, teaches kids about the concept of perception and how different people's perceptions might change based on what they bring to a situation. Or Have You Ever Seen a Flower? Again, how you can engage with nature and see things in a different way depending on who you are. The Story of Josephine Baker. Two New Years was a book that looks at a bicultural family that celebrates both Lunar New Year and Rosh Hashanah. So, just some like meaty stuff that's just presented in a really beautiful and inspired way. We also do board books, chapter books, young adult books, and graphic novels. So one type of book we do, we call novelties. So if you take a look at wild animals up there, just every page is die cut, board, because it's a board book, is die cut in this really, complex way. So kids can just really engage with the shapes of the animal, so not just a picture of the animal. The finger puppet books are like the dumbest, most adorable thing. I mean, it's just, I think we have like 75 of them or something.
Yeah.
And I'll just tell you a little funny story. I don't mean to, but I do go off in a different direction sometimes. So Baby Mushroom, just so you get a sense of what a designer needed to consider for Baby Mushroom, and sort of sketching out that little puppet and then sending it away to the printer, having the printer send back a real life dummy of it, going back and forth, getting it right. We couldn't not get it to look phallic. So just really, this was like a challenge. So these are the things that designers, have to engage in and troubleshoot. Seeing Gender is a fantastic book about, just explaining the concept of gender identity, of the spectrum, of sexual orientation to a young audience. So just a lot of sensitivity, but also respect needs to be dedicated to how you handle this type of content. Let's see, we also baked into all of these lists that you just saw, all these different categories, is what we call gift. And gift can really take any form that is not a book. So for the most part, these are paper-based items, however, not always. So in the upper right corner, you'll see a book called or a puzzle called Cat Formations. You can see a little cat kind of coming out of the wave crest there. It was based on a book, but Kristen, just realized that people didn't have a way to easily transport their puzzles from place to place. So she worked with a printer to come up, or manufacturer, to come up with this fabric pouch for a puzzle that you can bring everywhere. We use that format for a lot of different, lots of different artwork. Or the image below that, Kristen also worked on. It was in our bibliophile line. Those are ceramic vases that are just really, really beautiful objects. And then in the image to the left, you'll see everything from like little games in tins, journals, decks of cards that have information on them, so we call those decks. I don't mean playing cards, however, we also do playing cards. And at the bottom there, a game called Drinkin' with Lincoln, where you can do shots if you think the other person is lying. So when I say the joy, irreverence, and craft of publishing, you might ask, what am I talking about? What does that mean? Well, we have a number of different brand experience pillars. And essentially that's sort of corporate talk for what we want people who engage with our brand to feel, to experience. And that goes for people who make the stuff in our brand. So what we also feel, or what we are committed to, and what, I guess. So that's the joy and irreverence of craft of publishing. I just wanted to share a little bit with you all how that kind of shows up in all of the work we do and how we do it. So what is there to be so joyful about? Well, at Chronicle, we're really, really lucky because design is central to our values. We consider design to be a competitive advantage for the company, and it's really core to determining what we publish as a house and how we should publish it. So at other publishing houses, it might function like this, where an editor acquires a book, they develop the manuscript somehow ends up in design, designers make the book. At Chronicle, however, designers have a seat at the table when we're deciding what it is we should publish, what we want to publish, and how we can envision publishing it. So we're part of that core team, along with, you know, an editor, along with production people, marketers, salespeople. So it starts at the very beginning. So that's what I mean when I say that design is central to our values. And then as designers ourselves, we have the great fortune of having a department of over 20 of us. So you're getting 4 of us today. There's like 16 more. And we're really tight and we're really supportive of one another. Art school was our happy place, and we really are dedicated to conjuring that same level of camaraderie and just sort of support and inspiration for one another. And of course, just like any artist, we obsess over the tactile details, we obsess over type, we obsess over just how something comes together in a physical way, and we also really care about visual and cultural trends. The 20 of us design over 90% of our publishing ourselves. So we publish about 300 titles a year. So if you do the math, everyone is gonna have, you know, quite a lot of projects to design. I mean, it's kind of a lot. But it's fun. It's overwhelming, but it's fun. Because not only are you designing the projects of that year, you're finishing the projects of last year and you're starting the ones that are gonna come down the road. So, you know, it's great. And you practice out a lot of different aesthetics. We don't have like a house style. You know, that just would be, what's the word, antithetic? Antithetical to kind of who we are, because we really want to decide what the content is and how it should be executed, you know, because there's going to be a different audience for every single project that we do. So we get to experiment and play a lot. And then finally, we ideate products also. So those products can, again, take book form. They can also take a gift form. So, for example, a designer, Vanessa, who is a total foodie and very talented designer, cookie advent cookbook, she was like, okay, people love advent calendars. It's kind of just fun to rip open a page, see what surprise lays underneath. And she was like, well, why don't we just put an advent calendar, make the cover of a book an advent calendar. They'll be perfed. You lift up each day, and there's a photograph of a cookie recipe underneath. And then we'll hire an illustrator to illustrate the cover. We'll hire a food photographer to photograph all of the recipes, and we'll bring it together into one package, and that's what we did. So she had that idea, and we just sort of made it happen, and it's a perennial seller, year after year. The stones that you see there, designer Lizzie was at her desk, creative block, just sort of playing with some beach stones she had on her desk. And then she had like this aha moment. She's like, why don't we just make stones that people can play with at their desk, but we'll make them erasers, we'll make them really pretty, we'll put them in a great package, and we'll sell them. And everyone said, yes, Lizzie, that's a great idea. So we made them. And finally, that is actually a pad of butter. It's a pad of paper that looks like a stick of butter. And this thing, I don't know, Kristen and I tried to figure out how long.
It's
2015, okay, so long time. And it sells like crazy. And then here's another designer concept. Ryan, one of our children's designer, I don't really know how this happened, but he just sort of noticed that like llamas were trending big time. Everywhere he went, he was like, what's with the llamas? There are llamas everywhere, llamas, llamas, llamas. Oh, llama, yeah, llama nose. And it just flowed out of him. And it was great because kids want to, you know, how can we introduce gameplay to young kids in a way that they can comprehend? Well, this just flowed right off his tongue, and he hired a fantastic illustrator whose creativity just like went wild, and she did disco llamas and space traveler llamas and superhero llamas, and we made llama nose. Another reason working in this type of publishing is really joyful is because there's interdisciplinary collaboration. So if you told me in art school that I would have enjoyed this, I probably would have said, I don't think so. Because I actually in art school really liked having control over everything, you know, like I just wanted to know that I could, it was my vision and I executed it the way that I wanted to execute it. And some of you might be like that, some of you might not be like that, but I just sort of was a little insular in my process. Working with people in different disciplines is amazing because it makes the experience and the creativity just so much richer than if it were just your brain in something. So as designers, we work with editors, people in production. They're sort of our conduit to manufacturing, but they have really wonderful minds in terms of like how we can make something in a sort of like a material efficient way, I guess. Managing editors, they're the people who keep the trains on the tracks, make sure that we're running things according to schedule, and they also make sure that we don't make typos. Marketing people, publicity people, they engage with the press, they position how the products are going to go out there into the world. The salespeople are the people who sell it to our accounts. Inventory, those are the people who are fulfilling orders. Finance and legal. And you might be like, well, why do I need to even engage with someone in an inventory? Well, because what if we as designers spec something that is prone to damage? Well, that's gonna affect inventory. That's gonna affect returns. How can we then work with production to maybe like put slip sheets in between the products in the boxes? Or how, as designers, might we actually need to understand that that's a parameter and we're gonna have to figure out something else? Finance and legal, well, they're not that fun to work with, but they're necessary. And again, you know, if you think that the world is your oyster on a project, you can become pretty like stymied. But so when there's some sort of like hard parameters, like how much you can and cannot spend, or can you put a certain image on a book, or could that get us sued? I mean, that helps you make informed decisions. So it's really interesting to get the insight into all of these different disciplines as a designer. Another joyful thing is that the world is our studio. We work with so many different types of craftspeople, and they can be based anywhere in the world. So we work with freelance designers, illustrators, photographers, food stylists. Those are the people who make food and put it on a plate in a way that just looks appetizing and beautiful and inspiring. Prop stylists are the people who figure out what the plate it should go on. Or if it's a lifestyle project, you know, they they create the space, or if we're featuring products, they're setting up the set for that. Type designers, hand letterers, photo compositors, typesetters, and even paper engineers. So for all of our projects, we're just thinking about like who are we gonna collaborate with? Where are they located? We don't really have boundaries around that stuff. Excuse me. So I'm just gonna walk through. Let me see if I'm doing that time because I still have a lot more. I'm gonna just sort of walk through our partnership with Lego, just to kind of show you a little bit of how this collaborative and ideation and all these things I just talked about can come into play on a publishing line. So Lego and Chronicle, Lego, you know, it's like they're just, we all grew up with them, and they're just brilliant and masterful. So it was just sort of like this revered company for us, and we felt like sort of a kinship with them, just in terms of joy and the value of education and play. So we approached them because we saw an opportunity to grow their brand into an area that they were not manufacturing or releasing products for. And that audience they have this really fervent audience called AFLs. AFLs. And that stands for Adult Fans of Lego. So we were like, AFLs, we can do something for them, because it's not just kids who love Legos, it's adults who love Legos. Not just because they're buying them for their kids, but because they actually love them themselves. And we feel like there's a whole bunch of merchandise that we can create that will appeal to that audience. Okay, so one of the questions we asked ourselves is, okay, what might they like? Well, we thought, well, AFLs, adults, fans of Legos, they really like building things. They like puzzling things out, so maybe we'll make puzzles. And so we did. And we've made so many puzzles, we've sold well over 1 million puzzles for Lego in our 4 years of partnering with them. And so here's the thing for designers, like all these little boxes, those are sort of standard puzzles. But then this Christmas train one, we just ideated a new puzzle format that just didn't exist. We're like, okay, what if we do a train? What if, each segment can be built individually, and then you put them all together, and then how do you sort of ship them in the box so the pieces don't mush with one another, so one person knows what they're working on, another person knows what they're working on, it can then come together in this collaborative way. So we came up with that format, again, back and forth with the printer to get the dummies on the box. And simultaneous to that, this is part of our jobs. We built these Legos, and we set them up in our crit space. And we're like, oh, it'd be fun if the train, and then the elf, and Kayla had the idea, because we had to make sure that each segment had like a division between it. You couldn't have the division run right in the middle of the caboose or whatever. So we were like, oh, how do we stretch it out? And Kayla was like, oh, well, maybe you have like an elf stringing a thing of lights between the two. I mean, these are the conversations that we have, and it's just like kind of joyful. So we set it up in the crit space, and then we took a really terrible photo of it to get approval from Lego. And once we had their sign off, we're like, okay, now we gotta hire a professional photographer to come in here. So I hired a professional photographer. I had that photographer actually shoot every element on its own, because the whole set that's how it needed to be done. So we did that photo shoot, and then I sent all those individual ones, along with our bad iPhone photo, to a photo compositor. And he like zhuzhed it up and made it look dimensional, and voila, we were done. So that gives you a sense of the joy, the collaboration, and the different crafts involved. We also then iterated on the puzzle thing. You know, some of the Lego's best-selling items are these like, what minifigure is in that bag? Secret item. And so we were like, well, why don't we do the same with puzzles? And so we just put a mystery minifigure into a box, and these are selling like crazy. We have 2 more coming out. I had the pleasure of going to Denmark, where Lego is based. I went to that building, Lego House. It's actually a building that looks like connected bricks. I went into their archives, walked, you know, just spent days there with the editor, with an author, and with the photographer, just cataloging what artwork should go into a massive compendium that looks at the art of the minifigure. You know, how did the minifigure come to be? What were the engineering considerations that the toy designers needed to consider? What was their evolution of form, and how they sort of built upon that as manufacturing processes have improved decade over decade. So again, just collaboration. I needed the author there to say like, oh yes, I can see a section on blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, and here are the visuals, and here's the artwork that can accompany that content. And photographer, can you please shoot that? Oh, Brett. So Brett, one thing that's great about the Lego brand is that it's so well established that there's just has been room for us to kind of veer off into new aesthetics. It's still sort of are anchored in the language of Lego, but and will appeal to those adult fans. But they can take they can have different personalities. And so I reached out to Brett and Scott at McFadden Thorpe, and they put together this gorgeous package of a book of creative inspiration that came from Lego designers and engineers, just sort of how they engage in the creative process themselves, as a way to just sort of like ignite your own creativity and to just find your voice. So there were these mantras throughout the book, and Brett and Scott and their team just toiled over these insane typographic compositions that I think crashed their computers many, many times, because they needed to be modular, just like the bricks are. The exact ratio of all the bricks. No.
And they all had to be things that you could actually make.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't make stuff up. Like with Lego, it's all gotta be based on what exists in real life. And then they also did this daily calendar. And then here's a different aesthetic. You know, I had the chance to work with some fan artists who have created macro photography of minifigures, and we put together this like wonderfully charming book of you know, the miniature world of Lego photography. And again, these photographers are based all around the globe. And then finally, my last example for yet another totally different take on how you can showcase Legos. The botanical sets that Lego sells are like wildly popular. And so we had the concept of doing sort of like a botanical almanac. So you could really see how these things are constructed, but just in a very beautiful kind of archival style. I found a rep in London who agents a illustrator in New York, partnered with them, and it's just been a fantastic collaboration. We also are doing playing cards using her illustrations, as well as a few other titles that are going to come down the pike. So yeah, joy. It's having endless visual stories to tell, a million ways to depict them, and a world of people to create them with. Did I lose my irreverence slide? I did. That's okay. So what do I mean when I say that publishing is irreverent? Well, these are examples. Balloons that say, "Sorry, I'm such an asshole." Or a book of poetry written by cats for their owners, called "I Could Pee on This." Or a boob book, which helps you find your boob identity. Or a kid's book where the undies come down, they're like a belly band, but they come down. So you can open the book, and it encourages kids to figure out, it's like a matching game. Like, are these polar bears underwear? No, those are butterflies underwear. So it's that play kind of a thing. So you wouldn't necessarily think of making a book on any of these things, but they just, that's sort of what's so charming and irreverent about them. Here's a different creative take on something. Like I said, we partner with Star Wars, Lucas, and we wanted to do a compendium of their most famous female heroes. An option would have been just to capture screen stills of these people and just put that next to the write-up of who they are, what their origin story is. Instead, we reached out to 75 different female artists all around the globe and asked them to do an original portrait of each character. So it just was far more unique, and it was great to get their creative point of view. Babe the Cat is just this, havoc, crazy, rhyming story about trying to get the cat in a bathtub, which is really not anything anybody should do. And the fact that it's a biracial family headed by two fathers was not the point of the story. It wasn't even anything that we thought of. We reached out to this illustrator, David Roberts, and he was like, you know what? I don't want to do the same old family. Here's a little bit of a perspective that I can bring. And we said, great, let's do that. So it just adds more dimension and more surprise. Dolly Parton, we decided not just to do the book, but to also do a luxe edition where we wrapped the book in a case that was ensconced in denim and had all the bling on the exterior. And we got 2 demo tracks that had never been released before and pressed them into pink vinyl. So that actually is a record that plays. This was a great idea, again, a project ideation from from Lizzie, one of our cookbook design. Well, she does other things besides cookbooks. To do a cookbook that focused solely on sauce, called Saucy. And instead of just showing like traditional, bowls of sauce on a counter in a kitchen or whatever, she wanted to just really break down the recipes so you would see their textural qualities, and to have them treated as sort of like gestural paint swashes. So she found a photographer and art directed them to handle the content in that way. This is how we do fashion. Chinatown Pretty, this wonderful book brought to us by 2 lovely authors that profiles Chinatown's most stylish seniors. So it's both a cultural appreciation as well as fashion inspiration. You know, what can you find on the street just looking around you if you open your eyes? And then finally, does a bulldozer have a butt? It's just, so again, for kids, it's just, this is like, how do you come up with a book that is sort of a seek and find for kids, counting, teaches them it's okay to ask questions, even if they're silly questions. This is how we did it. And again, like, you just think about the critiques we have in the design space, like, oh, does the bulldozer butts look enough like a butt? Is it too buttish? Is it, oh, it's too round and bubbly, but maybe flatter? But I mean, it's just, it's wonderful. So, Irreverence. It's challenging the concepts of what publishing is and how content can be presented. It's pushing boundaries of what book people create and always endeavoring to delight and surprise. So I'm going to stop talking soon so you get to hear some other voices. How does Chronicle engage in the craft of publishing? I'll just sort of broad stroke it here, but then Kristen and Kayla and Sandy are going to really do a deep dive on some specific projects so you can see, start to finish, some of the considerations that go into the design process on different types of publishing. A book, a product that we ideated ourselves in-house, as well as a children's novelty board book. Wait, board book?
Yes.
Yeah, board book, okay. But in a nutshell, designers consider every detail from start to finish, and again, I know you can identify with this, being artists yourselves, but we're always asking, what creative vision will enhance the content? Who should we collaborate with to execute that vision? And how do all visual elements come together? How does the object feel in your hands? We're always thinking about that. We're always asking for dummies. We're also always trying to like gauge the heft or the weight, or just how something functions. And what special touches can we add to make something that our audience and our fans will treasure? So with that, Kristen.
You're going to be a really hard act to follow.
All right, hi everyone. Oh my God, there's a lot of you in here. Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'm here to talk about a really special book that I got to work on last year with the Karita Arts Center called New Rules Next Week. And every season there just happens to be at least one, usually there's more, projects that I'm working on that I like kind of have to pinch myself that I'm working on. And this was definitely one of them. In case you aren't familiar with Sister Karita Kent, she was an artist, educator, and social justice advocate. At the age of 18, she entered the religious order Immaculate Heart of Mary in Southern California and eventually became a teacher there at the college. While she is probably most well known for her vibrant serigraphs, which you see here on the right, she left an equally important legacy through her teachings. In the late 1960s, Karita and her students developed their own creative manifesto in class that they titled the Immaculate Heart College Art Department Rules. Over time, it has become known as the 10 Rules poster. The 10 deceptively simple rules capture the magic of Kent's approach to creativity, culture, and activism, and have been inspiring artists and designers ever since. With that inspiration in mind, we really wanted to kind of capture that legacy, and so we decided we wanted to do a book about it. And then, all right, so we approached the Karita Arts Center, who preserve and promote Karita's art, her teachings, and her social justice work, with the idea for the book, and they were like super interested, which we're really excited about. Inspired by how the original poster was a collaboration between all of her students, we were really interested in trying to capture that community, that sense of community. So we asked 10 different writers and 10 different artists to choose each a rule, and then the writers would write an essay about it, how it impacted their creative practice, and then the artists would visually interpret the rule as well. And so, just to give you kind of like a really brief structure of the book, every rule opens up with the rule just simply on a spread, so the reader can kind of look at it, read it, think about how they kind of would interpret it. Then it's followed by the essay written by the writer, or creative, so they're not all writers. And then it finishes with a piece, the art piece. So the process of finding 10 creatives to work on this project was a bit like putting together a puzzle. Ultimately, I wanted to have a wide array of voices, experiences, and styles in the book, which lends itself very well to one of my favorite things about my job, the incredible artists that I have the good fortune to work with. And I have always had this long-running wish list of artists that I want to work with, and so this was the perfect opportunity, since I was hiring 10 artists, that I could like go to that list and start like going through it, being like, okay, great, I'm gonna like reach out to this person. So, for example, Lisa Congdon is someone who I've worked on and off with for about 10 years. Very odd fact, we went to high school together, but didn't know it at the time. And through like our many years of working together, I knew that Karita was such a huge influence on her, just like her artistic practice, but also just how she looks at creativity. Lisa herself was an educator before she became an artist, and so there was so much, and actually she just did at her old college a show with Karita Kent's work. So I knew that if I did not reach out to her, she would come find me and be like, why am I not in this book? So she was like at the top of my list. And then we have Howsam, who actually was one of our design fellows. We have a really wonderful design fellowship program. And Howsam is also a CCA alum. Yeah, and so he actually, after the fellowship, went up and is working, or going to graduate school at Emily Carr. So for rule number 2, which is the general duties of a student, pull everything out of your teacher and also your classmates. I knew that Howsam would kind of be like a really perfect pairing for that one. And then rule number 3, probably know this, who would design these. Rule number 3 speaks about the general duties of a teacher, and I immediately hoped that I could work with my old colleagues at McFadden and Thorpe, who I'm sure you know their intention here. Not only because I'm a huge admirer of their design work, but also because I knew that they are such inspiring teachers, and so I thought that they would be a really good connection with this particular rule. And then, like Lisa, Erin Jang is someone who I've known for about 10 years, and she's one of the most inspiring people I know. And when I first approached her, she was like, I have to do rule number 4. Like, I have to. I was like, okay, you've got it, Erin. And she's like, I have a really special idea. And when she sent me the final piece, I was like, oh my gosh. So what Erin did was, one of her favorite books by Karita Kent is called Learning by Heart. And Learning by Heart is a book of 300 creative exercises. And so Erin chose 10 of those exercises, and each one of the letter forms in the word experiment is one of those creative prompts that she used to create. So yes, I was kind of pretty floored by that. And then, I'm gonna kind of quickly go through the rest of them. What I really love about all these artist contributions is that they're also different from each other, and I can really feel their interpretations of the rules speaking from their heart. Okay, now the cover process. Oh, covers. Often when working with an artist estate, or a licensor, there are limitations on what you can do with the cover that you're using, either in the interior book or on the cover. The Karita Art Center actually only had 2 requests. One was to use the original 10 rules poster as big as you can on the cover, and then also not to crop any of the art. So I had to use it all in its entirety. Oops, wait, sorry. Which, with just those two like requests, it's not actually a big deal, but I did quickly start realizing like, oh my gosh, there are gonna be a couple of challenges here. The entire poster is type. And then I got what we call a title memo, where we have all the information that, as a designer, we're supposed to add to the cover. And it was the title, the subtitle, had all 20 contributors. There was a thing about the Creative Center, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how I'm gonna fit this all on the cover when the whole the whole cover is supposed to be the poster. So I was like, aha, I'm just gonna have to make a belly band. But quickly, before we even start on the covers, we do always some comp research about, especially if it's an artist, like we have to see like what else has been published about them, make sure that none of our books look like theirs. But then also for things under the Chronicle umbrella, we have a company called Gallison, which does a lot of stationery. They had worked with the Creative Arts Center as well and had creative publishing, so I had to make sure that my book would actually merge with the stuff that we were selling on the gift side. So it's just kind of like educating yourself on what's out there. And then I also did a ton of research, because one of the things that we were a little bit concerned about with having to use the rules poster as the cover is, it doesn't really scream Creta Kent or her artwork. And so what I was trying to do was like looking through her artwork, what is inspiring me and what can I bring to our cover that might, like, for that Creta Kent fan that doesn't know about the 10 rules poster, how can I have little visual cues that might be like lead someone to be like, oh wait, that looks like Creta, maybe that is like, and then they might open it and find out that it is about her and all her creative practices and teachings. And so I started, and there were two things in Creta's like style that I was like looking at. I was like, well, A, she is so known for her color. It's just vibrant, it's electric. She uses really unexpected color pairings, I would say. And then she always does this thing where or not always, but in a lot of her posters in social justice work, she used to pull out and highlight words within words. So then when I got the title memo, I started thinking about like, the original poster was a collaborative effort coming together to like create the rules. We were asking 20 different writers, creatives, artists to come together and collaborate with us. And so in the word we, there's we. And so that's the word that I was like trying to highlight. So this is kind of where I started, and using the belly band as the way that I could get color into it. And then I just started doing more color pairings, but then I just still kept looking and be like, dear God, there's a lot of type on this, and I don't know where the eye is going. Like, so then I started I was like, okay, I gotta shake it off and I gotta just do something different. But ultimately, where we kind of were starting to all gravitate is like on the top row to the far right. Once I had set the rules into a border, I was like, okay, that's like feeling a little bit better. You're like giving your eye some space to like rest. It's giving a nice frame. And then I could really start playing with like color palettes, which was really fun. So, but again, I was like, God, there's still so much type. So we started like playing with like, what is the necessary information we need to have on the cover and on the belly band. Knowing that we really wanted to preserve as much space as we could on the cover for the rules poster, because that was such an important thing to the estate. And then what we ended up with was this cover. And instead of having all the contributors on the front on a removable belly band that could come off, we were like, well, let's put the whole list of the artists and the contributors on the back, and that way, even if the belly band comes off, they're still on the cover. So that was it. That's all I got. So Kayla's gonna talk to me next about first covers. face reveal here. How's everybody doing? Do you need a little stretch? Stretch it out, stretch it out. Yeah. All right, so that was a great example of collaboration with outside designers and creatives. For this next project, we're going to be talking about how Chronicle Books has so many talented people that we're able to harness our own creative powers and transform a kernel of an idea into publishing magic. So, this is a story of the Spark series. And it all starts with Caitlin, an editor in the art group. She was seeing all of these beautiful matchboxes out in the world, and she really wanted to make one for Chronicle Books. But flammable matches in a warehouse full of books, I'm sure you can guess, it's not a good idea. But instead of just throwing it out completely, she wanted to re-envision it and workshop it. So she got together with the other editors and took inspiration from some of our past series. One of them was the 52 series. And in this series, each deck is centered around a theme and has cards with different prompts on them. So she took this general approach to a series and decided to bring in the matchboxes. For the title itself, she had a rather ingenious way of positioning this. She used Spark as a series name, and then followed that with an inspirational word that would describe the product and also like what you were getting. So you got Spark Adventure, Spark Creativity, Spark Happiness, and Spark Romance. And these are some of our top sellers at the time of what we were doing. We launched with these 4 titles, and she put together a team in-house. So that was herself as the editor, Janine, our production person, who would talk with the printer and then tell us about materials and kind of guide us through the process of building the form. And then I came on for design. The whole team was really focused on this concept of matches. We love the whole things look like other things, like that pat of butter you saw a while back. So we wanted to do that here. Instead of cards, we decided to do these faux matches that we would print the prompt on one side and then have some kind of pattern on the back. And going to that materials thing, we looked at using craft paper that we would print on. So that would give like a wooden kind of vibe, very natural feel. And the box that we created was just like a matchbox. It was a sleeve with a pull-out tray. And these are die lines. You'll probably see these as you go through your projects and stuff. And then I came to my team with a question. Okay, I don't know if you can tell, I got the sparkly shoes. I love foil, anything that shines. And I wanted to have foil on the full package for this matchbox. I just wanted you to like go into a store, see it on the shelf, you see the gleam of the foil, it catches your eye and you're like, what is that? I need to pick it up. Like, I need to know what that is. And my team, they were like, yes, let's do that. I mean, with just pages and pages of beautiful, colorful foil, I knew that each title in the series could have a different foil color and be its own little magical unicorn out in the world. So we had the form all figured out. I had my materials that I was going to use with the help of Janine advising. And then Caitlin put together the title memo. Just like what Kristen was talking about, this is all the copy that needs to go on the actual product. So I had everything together. I was ready to design. After doing, research, mood boards, I went into sketching. And I really liked this second concept. Decided to flesh that out a little bit more with the other titles in the series. After some rounds of development, I came to 3 distinct concepts. The first one here was really inspired by vintage matchboxes. The
The second concept was a more illustrative one that I was kind of leaning towards, kind of digging. And the third one had more patterns and focused more on the typography that was being used. So, which one do you think won? What would you vote for? Anybody? Yeah, hold them up. 1, 2, 3. The winner, concept number 2. So I got to use all my beautiful foil. So at the time, I had started to get into 3D modeling. I was using Blender to envision how my designs would wrap around the box and really become a full product. This made it super easy for me to change out the colors, test out different foils, different background colors, that kind of thing. It also made it super easy for me to share these ideas with my team and that cover board that you heard about. So, after all the text corrections that we went through, some physical proofing, we had 4 beautiful products. Dun, 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 dun. These first 4 were pretty well received, so we went ahead and we made 2 more. Then after that, we made 2 more. And then we just kept on doing it for 3 more years. So after about 4 years of making these, we asked ourselves, what else can we do with this line? These boxes are great, but can we make anything else? So Caitlin and I got together again. We started brainstorming, and then I came together with, I started making 3D mock-ups of some of the stuff that we were talking about. So we had pencils, to-do list, a journal, maybe mini sparks. In the end, our sales team was like, do the journal, that one sounds good. So we're like, okay. We made this Spark Inspiration Journal. And you can really see how it's related to the series. Same foil treatment, basically same layout, all the typography is very much the same, just in a slightly different package. For the interior, we had gridded pages, line pages, and blank pages, all with prompts running throughout. But Caitlin, she was like, that's not enough. I want some more visuals inside. I want to make this thing really lovely. So I had to ask myself, okay, for the interior, we can't afford foil. Janine told me no. So how do I make the interior art look interesting? And to add to that, I only had 2 colors that I was printing with, a blue and a neon. And I'm not really an illustrator, I'm a designer, so kind of had to figure it out. Started with sketches, of course. And then, okay, this was during the pandemic, so I was starting to get into watercolors. Watercolors were like my sourdough. It was like, how do I bring this into the Spark series? I wasn't good enough to actually paint full-on pictures, So I decided to paint washes and then composite them together and use that as fills for my artwork. And I figured out if I use only cyan and magenta paints, I could easily bring it into Photoshop, swap out the channels, and make finished pieces in the 2 color. So with my process in place, I went on to do sketches, line art, painted and composited all the fills, and then put together everything with the outlines and the gradients and the text and made beautiful finished pieces. All in all, there were about 13 pieces that I made. And then that might not be a lot for illustrators in the room. I'm like, oh, I do that for a homework assignment. But for me, that was a really big accomplishment. And it was a very rewarding experience. It gave me a glimpse of the illustration side and made me realize how much time and exploration goes into those initial stages, which helps me when I'm art directing as well. Overall, we have about 20 titles within the Spark series, and it's considered to be a homegrown success. Ta-da! All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Sandy for some festive fun.
Hi, I'm Sandy. I'm a designer in the children's group at Chronicle, and I'll be walking you through a project from the very, very beginning to the very, very end. So this is Ariel Richardson. She's an amazing senior editor that I work with, and she's been at the company for a really long time, so she's made a bunch of picture books. And she was thinking, how can I make a book that's very different, very non-traditional? And she looked at other products we've made in the past. So this is a book that you can put little letters are in pockets, and adults can write little notes to their kids and put them in their lunch boxes. And she also looked at products that are made for adults, little cards that go in pockets, and each card inspires you to go out into the world and do something different. And then one Sunday morning, she was in bed and she was scrolling on Instagram, and she came across Dinara Mikhailova. And she was like, whoa, I'm obsessed with this art. And so she kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and this is what it feels like when you're looking at someone's Instagram. But she noticed that she had a lot of Christmas art and a lot of mermaid art. And kids love both of these things. And so we put our heads together, and we've been thinking a lot about pockets. Maybe we can put board books into pockets. Maybe we can make one that's Christmas themed. Maybe the board books can be in the shapes of houses. So there's Santa's house or the elves' houses. And we can put them in pockets and create this magical Christmas land. And maybe we can do the same thing with mermaids. Maybe there's a castle that a mermaid lives in, or a little house that a mercat lives in, things like that. And so we reached out to Dinara, and Dinara loved these ideas, and so she started working on a manuscript. And as she was working on it, she found herself talking to her daughter a lot. And Dinara's first language isn't English, but her daughter grew up in America. And so her daughter started helping her write stuff, and they realized that they were a great team, and they decided the daughter would be the author, and Dinara would be the illustrator. So this is Sabrina sketching and writing her little poems. And this is Dinara's first sketches. As you can see, she's drawing out the little houses and Santa Claus and his little polar bear friend. And then this was the concept we came up with. We would have one board book in the shape of Santa's house. You would see every room, the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom. And then we'd have a book in the shape of Polar Bear's house, and Polar Bear can be Santa's pet. And then instead of an elf workshop, we're gonna have a mouse workshop, and the mice will build all the toys. And so we brought this idea to our printer, and our printer sent these to us in the mail, and they're like, is this what you were thinking? And we were like, this is exactly what we were thinking, so thank you. And yeah, I got lucky, yeah. And so as you can see, you have 3 board books, each in the shape of houses, and these books can go into these little pockets within a case. And so they sent me the templates, and I was like, oh my god, a lot of measurements and a lot of different shapes, but as you can see, it made it very clear to me of what I had to focus on. Up here, I have the case. Down here, I have the 3 different pockets, and then I have the 3 different books. And so Dinara started sketching, and I'm gonna walk you through just one of the books. So instead of using the name Santa Claus, we decided to use Mr. Klaus. Klaus is a name that's often used for Santa in Europe, and Dinara is from Europe, so we thought that would go really well together. A nice nod to where she comes from. And so these were the first sketches. As we were talking about earlier, you see Santa in his living room, Santa in his kitchen eating, Santa in the bath, and Santa going to bed. And as we were working through things, we bumped into some things that we were like, we need to figure out some problem solving. So as you can see, the books all have windows in them. And for the first cover sketch, Denara had an idea of, okay, let's see Santa in a window on the side of his house. But we noticed that when you open up the book, the windows were going through the Christmas tree in his house. And we can't have holes in a Christmas tree. Like, how are we gonna deal with this? And so we put our heads together, and we realized that we can flip the art. And so the Christmas tree will go on the right side of the page, and then the windows can be the front door of the house. So you can see how that worked out on the front cover on the right. And then we started thinking about the case. So what are the pockets gonna look like? What's the art gonna look like that sits behind the houses? So we thought, well, maybe the pockets can be little maps and they bring you up to the house. And maybe the back of the case can be a wintry night sky with shooting stars, something very cute. So it creates like this whole village where these little houses live. And so Denara started painting, and we worked with a lot of different illustrators. Some paint or work with colored pencils, but some also work digitally. And so that's a fun thing that we like to do, and it's fun for me because I get to look at all types of art. And then onto the cover. One of Denara's first ideas was showing Mr. Klaus and a mouse instead of a window. And when I looked at this, I thought, you know, there's 3 main characters, so how about we add Polar Bear as well? And then so she sent this over, the middle one, and then I thought, well, you know, these characters should be a lot bigger, because when a kid is in the store, we want them to easily see these characters and think, oh my God, Santa Claus, that's what I want. And we also started thinking about, okay, these are 3 little house-shaped books in a box. Like, how are people gonna know what this is? And so we started thinking about maybe there can be little signs that point to the houses. So Mr. Klaus's house, the Mouse Workshop, Polar Bear's house. And maybe we should add a little burst, 3 books in one, so people can look at this and get an idea of what it is. And so we started pushing that even more. Maybe we should actually have the houses on the cover so it's even clearer to the audience of what this is. And how can we play with showing the characters even bigger and more clearly? And then this is a direction that we landed on. And every week the designers have a show and tell group. We show each other what we're working on and we give each other feedback. So this is a piece of paper that I brought to that show and tell group. So we were thinking that this is gonna be a series. And so I was thinking, okay, this is gonna be a series, does it need a logo? And so my first design was, I'm gonna make this little logo called Pocket Books. And so we can put that on every product in the series. And then I was like, and maybe we should put a little description below the title. 3 books in a pocket-sized winter wonderland. Like, maybe that's what will help people know what this is. And then in the second version, we were like, well, should we make this even clearer? Should we, on the signs, should we say book 1, book 2, book 3? What's gonna work? And then again, on the third version, let's play with putting the houses in. Oops. And so from there, I had to focus on the case again, this time the front of the case. So I put the cover on the first panel, and on the panel to the right, I had to think about the back cover. And we thought, let's put a photo of the books on the back, so when someone picks it up in a store, they can turn it around and be like, oh, that's what's in here. And then there was a fun inside flap, so we decided to put a map on that as well. And then these are, this is the cover direction we ended up with. And in draft 1, we noticed, so the more design thinking came in. We noticed that the color of the titles kind of doesn't stand out as much, so we should fix that. Typography-wise, the L's don't sit on the same baseline in Village, so we should fix that as well. There's a lot of red on this cover. Maybe we don't need that much. There's also a border all around the cover. Is that adding anything to it? And then in the final version, we fine-tuned everything. We made the title bright white, we fixed those L's, we added the burst back in, 3 books in one, and we made the signs brown to step back from all the reds. And now it's a thing. You can go and buy it, you can go and pick it up, and this is what it all looks like. And so I'll walk you through the 3 houses. As you saw earlier, This is Mr. Krause's house. He's eating his pancakes in his kitchen. He's taking a bath. He's going to bed. This is Polar Bear's Nook. With this one, we decided it wouldn't be a literal house. It would be his little world. So he can go fishing, he can go tubing, he can read a book. And then this is the mouse workshop. They're cutting the wood, they're painting the toys, they're wrapping up the gifts. And then the really exciting part was that Denora was able to go to the Bologna Book Fair, which is a huge book fair in Italy, and all the publishers come together and they show off their books. And we were able to feature her art on our booth at the book fair, and so it was really exciting for her to see it nice and big, and that it was being shown to everybody at the fair. And so now you can buy this book online, but I strongly suggest that you go to an actual bookstore and support our small local companies. And remember those mermaids we were talking about earlier? Now you can buy Merfolk Village, or pre-order, because it's coming out in May. And so with Merfolk Village, we decided that both of these products need to be very cohesive. So you'll see that the title is in the same place. Again, we have 3 books in one burst. We have those signs, you see the houses, and the characters are always going to be on the right. And kind of what I was talking about earlier, that's a little mer cat right there. So thank you.
So I hope that those 3 case studies just give you a sense of how much care and thought and really craft goes into what it is we do at Chronicle. The collaborative nature of everything, both with our in-house colleagues as a design group, as well as outside talent. And, you know, Kristen and I were kind of joking. It's not that funny. It is funny, but the 4 of us combined, you're looking at over 60 years of Chronicle Books experience. And the reason why I say that is not to point out our ages, but more to just highlight the fact that it's rare to stick around in a job for a long, long time. And there's just a really nice sense of, there's tenure in what we do. You're certainly not going to get rich in publishing, I'm just going to tell you that, or by contributing to publishing. However, there is a lot of joy, there's irreverence, and there's craft. So if this is appealing to any of you, there are some ways to partner with Chronicle. First, we have this amazing design fellowship program, which Kristen had mentioned before. This is a program that we started over 15 years ago. And we select 3 applicants from submitted portfolios that we receive to join us for a year. It's a fully paid position with benefits and vacation and all of that. Again, it's for designers. And basically people jump on board and work with us as a junior designer, more or less. So we certainly ramp up, but by the time people leave, they usually have projects of their own that they've designed to add to their portfolio. And we also do have a number of former fellows who are on staff at Chronicle. And the people who we don't, where a job doesn't necessarily open up, they just go off and land just really wonderful work opportunities. So you might recognize some of these posters because these are posters that have been hanging in the wall in the halls of CCA over the past years, and they're all designed by fellows. If you're not a designer but are interested in freelance work, this top address is where you can send links to your website or send us PDFs. And we're very committed to looking through the email submission inbox and we share them with one another, and we have a database of artists that we are very committed to maintaining. If you have a book or a project idea, there is an email address for that. And we also, if you're into writing, we also have an editorial fellowship that's akin to the design fellowship, which I just mentioned, and those are in a specific area, either the art category, the entertainment category, or the food and lifestyle category. Or wait, or kids. And I guess kids, yeah, so I don't know if there's four. I don't think there's a food and lifestyle one, actually, you're right. But so here's all that information, if that appeals to you. So with that, I can say thank you for listening to us.
Okay, so if you have questions, just raise your hand and I'll come for you.
Hi, thank you so much. How do you know when to compost an idea, abandon it altogether? It seems like you must have a million ideas a minute. I'm just curious, how do you decide when, like, this project isn't going anywhere?
I work on a lot of gift projects, so we have a lot of ideas and a lot of them don't go anywhere. Oftentimes it's cost, like we can't afford to make it. Like we've had a lot of ideas that we've just, for like, honestly, like 5 years worked on ideas. And like, we can make it this way, we can make it this way, and then, oh yeah, and then it just never goes anywhere. I feel like we all have like a really long running list of ideas that we wish we could do. I will say that once something gets acquired, we generally actually make it. But if it's like something about design or covers, we do have this like really great weekly show and tell that we all share. So I think if ever we get stuck, and I sit next to Kayla, and I can't tell you the number of times a day I whimper, I'd be like, can you help me? Like, I just need, eyes. Like, and Vanessa does this. I feel like we're all very collaborative and always willing to like help each other get unstuck. So yeah, I feel like I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah. If anyone else has any other, no?
Did you mean like a publishing project or like a design direction?
There's a long tail for all your work, and it seems so involved, but I just feel like, do you do that with every project, and every project gets that far, or you must abandon some along the way?
We don't, like Kristen said, if we've actually formally signed up a project, if we feel like there's enough there, and the house is just all different areas of the house, so editorial, feels like it's viable, if marketing feels like they can position it well, if design feels like there's a vision for it and we can make it in a unique way, then we're committed to it. Yeah. So we don't sort of, in all my years there, we have not killed many projects at all. So we'll just gum it to death.
Hello. How do you put together a book or a project submission?
There are requirements on our website, so if you go, we do have on our website, there are requirements for how to submit a project idea, a book proposal or a gift proposal, or a kids. I think kids is a little bit different, but there's like guidelines about that, but if you just want to submit your portfolio, then you just send your link in a PDF or something, so yeah.
You're able to work with a lot of really interesting materials and subs, like having a lot of very from erasers to like foiled to having like porcelain and stuff. I was gonna ask, how do you, like, when you're sourcing that, like, do you have like a repertoire of people you usually like would go into contact with, like manufacturing people, or like is there like often a searching process for it? I'm very interested. What's that like? I would feel like manufacturing can be such like a hard thing for artists to like access, because obviously there's the startup cost, which is the benefit of being a part of a business like yours, where you can actually have the resources to fund and take risks on projects that you normally, an individual artist could never do for themselves, but like, I'm just very curious about that process a little bit. I know it's not always the most interesting thing.
No, good, yeah. Caleb, you want to take that one?
So like I mentioned, we have production developers and production designers, and there are liaisons to our printers and manufacturers. And there are some that we regularly go to over and over again. But then, like the ceramics, we need to find somebody new. So we have a team of actual production people who investigate new manufacturers, and that shared knowledge helps us in design know what we can and can't do. So from design, we're not like finding those manufacturers ourselves, we're working with our production people to source. So thank you to them, because
We mostly manufacture overseas. So we're not using domestic vendors. Sorry, we manufacture using overseas vendors, so we don't really, it's very expensive to create things domestically, yeah.
Hi, I have a question about the business side of the work. Like, let's say you have an idea that you develop in-house from your own team, or you just get a really brilliant concept for a talented person outside of the company. Who do you pitch that idea to get funding and buy-in? Like, who is your client? Is it a client? Is it an investor? Is your creative director? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, we are our own client, which is super cool. So, and we really have an open door policy. So editors are the editorial discipline is the one that will formally sign up a project. However, anyone from any discipline could start that conversation like, hey, I've got this idea. Or, hey, we've developed a strategy in the art publishing group to, do crafts. And here's an amazing crafts person, the ceramicist who would be a wonderful author to author that book. So we're just very fluid in our communication. And so I don't know if that answers your question. There are different mechanisms that we use to pass ideas, but the ideas can really come from anywhere.
Hi, I'm Jenny, I'm an illustration major. I have a question about the budget. Like, you guys have a lot of process, and there's it seems like you can, I love that you hire outside collaborators, but how do you determine what project gets how much, when you can afford things, and are there some things that will sell better, maybe you spend more on that?
I will say for gift products, because it costs so much to actually make the physical form, we usually don't have much at the end of the day for an illustration budget. Oftentimes for gift products, the authors are the artists themselves, and so we can give them royalties. So there's a way that we can structure it so that it makes it a worthwhile cause for them to collaborate with us. I think it's basically each single project we have what we call a profit and loss sheet, P&L. And so we put into the advance of the author or the artist. So we factor in all the costs and make sure that we can eventually make money on the project. So it kind of just differs from book to, obviously books have a higher retail cost, so you have a little bit more playing room with the budget. But yeah, I feel like that's how we kind of especially for the gift products where we may not have any money, like in an actual illustration budget, we can kind of make it work when it's an author collaboration, but yeah.
Yeah, so in the P&L, like Kristen was mentioning, we have all those fields, you know, what quantity do sales feel like they can sell? What are the inventory costs gonna be, that are associated with something? What the unit cost is, what's the appropriate unit cost, because we can't just say like, oh, we wanna make this killer cookbook, have every recipe photographed, on location, and we're gonna sell it for $55. People don't buy $55 cookbooks very often. So if we know that like we want to get it into certain sales channels, that those sales channels aren't going to take it if we don't price it below $29.95. We've got our unit cost. We've got how many we think that we can sell. We're sort of like working backwards a little bit, and sort of parsing out what is the appropriate spend and what is the viable spend. So.
Hello. I was wondering, it would be great to know how some of y'all got into this industry and into this company. And I was also wondering, for a second question, if any of the designers have actually illustrated the books as well. I know, Kayla, you were illustrating some of it, but I wonder if there's any other examples of that as well.
I'll start with part one, getting into the company. So I started as a fellow. I was in the children's design program. I was there for about 6 months. It was a shorter term. And it was my first introduction to publishing. I didn't really know that much about book design. Learned everything like on the job kind of thing. And I loved the company, loved the environment, loved my coworkers, and I was lucky enough to stay and be hired on full time. So it doesn't happen for everybody that way. They go from the fellowship to full time, but it just worked out. In my case, there was an opening. So I'm very grateful for that experience.
I went to Academy of Art, and one of my best friends got the fellowship, and we used to have a marketing and branding fellowship, so like designing marketing materials like posters and postcards and ads, and like the booth I showed, like designing those things. And she was the fellow, and she realized like, I want to work for a company that's a lot smaller, and I specifically want to work for a design firm. And I didn't have a job at the time, and she reached out to me and she said, there's a job opening, and this place is really cool, and I think you'd be a really good fit. And so I applied for the marketing and brand design group, and I got that job. And I had that job for 4 years. And then a position in the children's group opened up. And when I was on the marketing group, I made a lot of marketing materials for children's books. And while doing that, I basically just studied all of the files for all the children's books. And the whole time I was like, oh my God, I love all these illustrations. I wish I could like work with these people. And I also learned like, wow, this is how a book is laid out in InDesign. And then through that I was like, I can do this, and I really want to do this. And so I applied for the children's book designer role. And I've been here for 3 years in that role.
I'm embarrassed to say how long I've been working at Chronicle. So I've been at Chronicle for almost 20 years now. And I was one of those designers that would like, I worked in the industry for about 10 years, and I was at like small design firms around the city, but I was always like, oh my God, the dream would be to work at Chronicle. And at one point, I worked across the street from where Chronicle, our old office was. And I was on the 10th floor, and they were down on the 5th floor, and I would look down sometimes and be like, someday I'll work there. And then like I was doing like my own note cards and like selling them at craft fairs. So I actually started, we were organized a little bit differently, and I was exclusively in the like gift publishing side. So that's kind of like my entryway into Chronicle was through my note card designs. The design manager that hired me, one of her friends had given her a set of my cards that I had like illustrated and designed. And yeah, a position had opened up and I applied and I got that one. So yeah, and I remember very vividly on my second week of working at Chronicle being like, this is where all my people have been my entire life. Like, I just was like, I feel seen, they all get me, I want to put foil on everything, like, I want you all to be my new best friends. So yeah, and I think people always ask, like, what keeps you at Chronicle for so long, and it really is the people. Like, I feel, just no matter what project I'm working on, or like, you know, we've evolved also through the 20 years that I've been there, but it's really like the people you actually get to collaborate with, like in our office, but also the people outside that really just is special and unique, I think. So,
Sarah. I've been at Chronicle for 25 years, so it's been a long time. Let's see. I had a different career for a little while in marketing, and that just did not work well for me. And so I moved out here and came to school at CCAC as a second degree student because there wasn't a graduate program at that time, and I studied design. And then I went on to work for, I'm not quite, is Jennifer Morla still on staff, faculty here? Yeah, so I went to work for Jennifer Morla for about 3 years, and then I joined Chronicle. So to answer your question about illustration, like you saw with Kayla's project, she did that. We don't hire designers to illustrate projects. Sometimes they might see the opportunity to illustrate something that's on their list, in which case that's great, but it's not at all an expectation, and nor is it generally, it's not feasible all that often because the jobs themselves, just art directing and designing the stuff, is so time intensive that to also illustrate is really, it's quite a lot. So.
In the brand group, we had a few designers who did a lot of illustrations for stuff related to Chronicle Books. So when we made the ad about Chronicle, they would draw cute cats because a lot of our books have cats in them, and they like represent us in a way. Or so like even if you're not working on a book, or if you do have a design job, if you have illustration skills, that can help you. And it also makes the job more fun. But that's just another way that you can get into that, or that people from within the company draw, even if they're not solely an illustrator.
Over here has had their hand up the longest.
Hi, I was wondering, do you guys have like general timelines for projects, or do they differ between projects? Like some involve longer production times, longer leads, or is that kind of dependent on the arena? Like, if you have one timeline, children's would have another. Yeah, could you speak to them?
yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah, definitely the gift stuff has a longer lead. Generally, if it's a format that we've never actually published into before, so if there's format creation, that can be years in the making. However, if it's a journal or note cards or something that we've got that form, then much quicker. Books, I mean, it spans the gamut. Certainly kids' books take the longest to execute because of all the illustration work involved. So we'll sign up projects like,
I got an email
Yeah, so a couple years. And same with adult books as well. But then sometimes we'll slam something on a list and we're like, okay, we gotta get it out, and you know, yes, Snoop's his own thing. But so, and then, I don't know, under a year is fast. Because if we're printing overseas and then it's gotta be shipped over here, that in and of itself, and then you need it in advance of enough time for publicity and, but I would say like.
We publish it in 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So there's in theory there are schedules that we're, you know, kind of following. But yeah, like Sarah said, not all of them make that schedule. So we have ideals and then there's the reality, so.
But I would, a year, 2 years, I guess.
We work a year in advance.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get, because I have to back down.
Hi, I'm just kind of curious, what is the, what are the things that happen directly after a book is released? Like, what do you kind of do to advertise, like, the new release?
Luckily, we don't have to.
Yeah. We don't have to do anything. There is, like Sandy mentioned, there's a brand design group. There's 4 designers in that group, and they're prepping the promotional materials that will, you know, that support a title. But do you mean like sales and marketing, or were you asking about designers?
Yeah, like specifically what's done by sales and marketing, or?
Oh gosh, a lot. I mean, it really depends on sort of like the marketing, how much we're investing in, you know, are we sending an author on tour? Very rarely, because it's very expensive. But, you know, they're like sending out press kits and mailers to the media to get things covered, to have reviews done. We're selling at different book fairs around the world. So you saw Bologna Book Fair, there's Frankfurt Book Fair in London. We're showing stuff at New York now, different gift shows. So sales and marketing does quite a bit. You know, they're liaising between media and the authors for interviews. Yeah, so a lot.
There's also, we have a social media team for both adult books and children's books. They make the TikToks, you know, all that stuff. On the brand team, they make teacher's guides, and so that like teaches a teacher how to teach the book. That was teaching in one sentence. And so that can help sell the book because a teacher is like, this can really help my classroom, things like that. Oh, and also, sorry, illustrators and authors get super excited. And so when their book comes out, it's all over Instagram, it's all over Facebook. I had an illustrator who just put on like a full photo shoot herself, photographing the book, and so they really helped as well.
So we have time for like 2 more questions. Okay, so.
Wait. Okay.
Hi. I function both for, you know, in-house designers and also when you're working with outside artists. How much freedom is there for that kind of artistic process? Like, is there a lot of pushback? You mentioned it's collaborative with different areas and different teams within the company. Like, I know it varies with different publishing groups. Like, how much pushback do you have from like marketing or finance, you know, and how much freedom does then transfer over to the artists that you're working with?
I guess it's kind of different for each one. Yeah. Kids does a lot of illustration.
So your question was like, how much freedom do people have?
Yeah, the gist of it.
Okay. From like what I do is I basically say like, I give them a layout of what the book, I just put all the text on the spreads, and I give it to them and I say, send me sketches. And so they send me their first sketches of what they think the book can look like. And then from there, I start doing art direction. And sometimes a layout just doesn't make sense. And so I have to tell them, like, can you change this, can you change that? But it's all collaborative. And, of course, if an illustrator draws an adult in France smoking a cigarette, we can't have that. There's different rules in different countries, things like that, yeah.
And I would say for the example for Krita Ken, we were going to these people for their, visual interpretation, so it was very, very light touch on my end. I feel like it came in and I was like, well, this is what you felt the rule was, so that's what it's gonna be. I think that Kayla and I both work in the art publishing group, so a lot of our authors are the artists. And again, we're going to them for their artistic style, and it's bringing something to our list that's different. But it is sort of like the children's, it is definitely like a collaborative experience, or working relationship. And I don't know, I'd like to think that we're pretty open and flexible. And I think not to say scrutinize is a bad word, but I feel like our covers are the ones that are approved by a lot of different people. So I think if there's really gonna be a lot of changes or things that, it's usually because it's like, we just need to read the title better, So I think that from a cover standpoint, those are probably the ones that probably get the most rounds of revisions and things like that. But yeah, otherwise it's just little details that maybe, I think we try to have the overall idea behind the art kind of come from the artists, because that's why we're hiring them, and looking to them for their inspiration and their voice and their experience. But we're also there to make sure type reads and fits in the layout and things like that. So I think those are the more so comments that we're often making, being like, it doesn't fit in the book trim. Can you we need more bleed, things like that. So.
Or a character can't sit right in the middle of the book because
Yes.
the gutter goes between the pages. Just things pushing them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, but we also do need to consider the author's point of view. So an author, we might go out and, again, we're sort of our own client, but there is an author attached to most of what we do, and so they're going to have a point of view as well. So it really is weighing up a lot of people's input and really gauging what the next best step is without compromising to beige, but really the only people approving anything, the only higher ups, the only higher up approvals that we're getting are on the covers. So the rest of it is kind of the team negotiating among themselves to weigh all the different points of view.
Okay, and I saw a hand back here. All right, last question.
Good evening. It's not a question, but as someone that's been pushing pencils and pixels for a few decades and an alum of this place here from the other side of the bay, thanks. This has been quite inspiring, even for old guys like me. And just seeing you continually work in print, giving illustrators, especially my background, opportunities to thrive and create some wonderful work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Chronicle Books. Thank you, our wonderful team. And thank you everybody who attended. Nope.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, spread the word. We're about to post a job opening for senior designer in our entertainment group.
That was a solid shout. All right, thank you guys so much. Thank you for coming and being here, and